Yo, we are live. All right. We are going to be going over the bloated state of web development by techroasts. But before we do, we're going to turn on some music and then shout it out. And we are good to go after that. Boom. All right, let's go. You know what? I'm up for this playlist. It's going to be loud at first, I think. No, it's actually good. Is it? Ooh, that's kind of loud. That's better. Let's turn it down just slightly. Turn this down slightly. All right, that's good. I think. All right, let's shout it out in Discord, and we're gonna jump into it. All right. Live. I'm live. All right. Yo, we're good to go. What's up, Gene? What's up, Miles? How you guys doing? All right. So, let's jump into it. But yeah, feel free to, just share your opinions and stuff in chat. It seems like it's a pretty short article, but we turned the short article that we did last time into like an hour-long live stream, so... did the title of the stream change? No. Not at all. What's up, Billy? How you doing? All right, let's go ahead and jump into it. The bloated... Hold on. All right. All right, now let's jump into it. Sorry, I got distracted. All right, let's go. The bloated state of web development by techroasts. So I don't read any of these articles, but I can tell you that I was attempting to do a thumbnail, a YouTube thumbnail, with this entire picture, and I had a gesture of me kind of just like making like weird, awkward eyes, like, can you believe this is happening? But the way the thumbnail made it look, I was checking out all these men. So I changed the thumbnail. But I do like it. I'm just going to say that. I do like this thumbnail. And it's because of how fucking ridiculous JavaScript has become with all of these abstractions, with all of these frameworks. I get why people are so frustrated with JavaScript. Trust me, I get it. I hear you. I love JavaScript because it allows me to build almost anything I want. And it's changed my entire life, but I get it. You know what? We're going to restart this. This is a scuffed review because I forgot I need to plug in my Ethernet cable because, yeah, my internet sucks without it. So give me 1 second. I am so sorry. Be right back. Yo, okay, we're back. Let's redo this. What the fuck was that intro? All right, so I think now we have stable internet. What's up, Line Bolt? You guys ready to go? What's up, everyone coming into chat? What's up, Mahan? Hello, B. How you guys doing? All right. Whew. Let's dive in. The bloated state of web development by techroasts. All right, so Another day, another JavaScript framework popping up. Seriously, web devs nowadays are like little kids in a candy store, grabbing at every new shiny toy that comes along. Do you really need another fucking framework to add a hamburger menu or a list box component? Give me a break. Back in the day, all you needed was some good old HTML and CSS to build a website, and that was not even that long ago. Okay. No Node, no NPM, no 39,483 dependencies to slow your site down to a crawl. The man makes, Morris's techroasts, man, woman, whatever. The person makes a good point. The author makes a good point. The dependency buildup is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Even for professional JavaScript developers, it's a pain in the butt to go back. I mean, like, sometimes I think we add more features into websites, into web apps that don't need to be there because it's so easy to add. I think developers, especially professional developers, love to be able to build complexity into a pre-existing code base. I think a lot of developers love to do that because they love this new library and the team has to check it out. It has to adopt it. I feel like there's a lot of feature creep because, or I shouldn't say necessarily feature creep, because a lot of companies are going to weed that out and trim that fat, hopefully. But they're like, as a developer, it's your duty, it's your responsibility to make a good argument, a good use case to bring something new into the code base. So I feel like some of the conversations that I've heard and lectures that I've heard from developers on my team, like, you talk to the developer, they just wanted to add this like really cool table library in, and like then they talk to product and they talk to UX, and like somehow they convince them that this is needed for the users. And like the reality is, a lot of developers just like adding a bunch of shit in. There's a lot of shiny toy syndrome. That's what it's called. And it's ridiculous in the JavaScript world. So I don't know where we need to settle on the amount of dependencies like an average application needs. Obviously, that's going to vary, but I feel like I can, if I start thinking about the apps that I worked on, there are so many dependencies where I've had the conversation of like, why is this in there? Oh yeah, Doug or John wanted to add this dependency in. 6 months ago, 8 months ago, now we just maintain it. Like, the number of times I've had that conversation, it's obnoxious. So I'm not complaining about the number of dependencies. What I'm complaining about is why the fuck are we adding those dependencies in the first place? Like, if the app needs something, add it, but then maintain it, create a plan to be able to, like, I think sometimes developers need to create a plan to be able to just, like, you know what? I'm going to keep reading. I feel like I'm just going off on a little bit of a rant that makes no sense right now, but I feel like dependencies just don't need to be injected into every single feature. And I feel like you can build custom functions, custom modules, and I think simplifying the feature and pushing back to be able to simplify that makes sense. It's going to make scalability a lot easier. I don't know. I guess I'm torn between, like, the argument against all these dependencies. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, and it can speed up workflow. It can, when it's needed, it can push out features pretty damn quickly. Creating everything custom makes no sense either. So this whole, back in the good old HTML and CSS days, I think we got a bit of a boomer on our hands that, like, probably isn't even, trying to consider some of the needs and, like, how hard it is to keep someone's attention nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, we had really shitty layouts that would keep people's attention way longer with way less code. And then we have apps like TikTok. We have a lot of technology just destroying people's attention where we need to get features out. We need to make them as fancy as possible. And, you know, we're lucky if the user will take 2 seconds out of their day to not close our application and say, fuck it, I'm going to something else. 2 seconds was too long. You didn't impress me. So I don't know if I'm like on board with this statement, but there's an in-between somewhere. So, all right, we came back and we're aligned now. So, and it worked just fine. Pages loaded fast, code was clean and simple. You didn't have to worry about shipping a damn compiler for a single website. But then JavaScript came along, barging in like an over-eager frat bro, complicated and everything. All of a sudden, you needed to build tools to bundle and minify your code, package managers to wrangle dependencies, transpilers to convert between 37 flavors of JavaScript. Yeah, it's let me continue reading. I need to like get this whole person's perspective on this, because I think he's just like he's just trying to give a picture for like how bloated JavaScript has become. That's fine, but I want to see if he's actually reasonable about this. Web development went from sipping tea on a porch to doing tequila shots at a frat party real quick. The culture, I guess the modern culture around web development, I hate startup culture that keeps employees there with ping pong tables, that keeps employees there with after hours that are like kind of required if you like really want to move up the ranks, right? But that's always kind of been there, but it feels very frat boyish, and it feels like there's just, I don't know. Like, I wasn't a professional developer 10, 15 years ago. I just talked to older developers. And when I talk to, like, developers that have been coding for, like, 15, 20 years, like, they were just super curious people. Like, they would just build anything. And they would wonder why something worked the way it did. And they would dig into it and figure out what's happening under the hood. I feel like the culture has shifted into something a little bit more streamlined, where it feels like developers, there are just a lot of developers that don't really, they're kind of doing the minimum to get by. Like, I think we've sold this unrealistic dream that everyone should become a developer and that everyone could become a developer. Everyone had the mindset to become a developer. Everyone should learn to code. And I feel like it brought a lot of people that are just trying to create this fast track into becoming a programmer. And they're not, like, there are a lot more people nowadays that aren't as curious about coding. They're doing the bare minimum possible. And I see that a lot in the JavaScript world. And so I can see that mindset adopting this idea of, oh yeah, we're going to bring in more libraries to make it easier so we don't have to write this custom function and write a bunch of tests for it, right? But I feel like we're trying to bring in a lot of developers into the industry that kind of just suck at what they do. And they're not curious enough. They don't care to know enough to get really good. I think companies are having a real hard time of like bringing in strong software engineers. And it's very hard to hire a good senior engineer, right? It's very saturated at the entry level. But it's very hard to, it's just very hard to find a good software engineer with a right mindset that cares about programming. And for what? So you can have a bloated SPA that takes 5 seconds to load and runs like crap on mobile? Great job, people. The worst part is this mess keeps piling up year after year. Grunt, Babel, Webpack, Rollup, Parcel, Vite, Bun, and 100 more I can't even remember. I get it. I have to be honest, I don't even know what half this crap does anymore. I just npm install and pray to the JavaScript gods that it works. Just use React. It's the best, they said. Okay. Let's be honest. Yeah, they're really laying into the frat analogy for sure. I don't think that most professional front-end developers love React as their favorite front-end framework. React has just become extremely popular, and it's here to stay for a long time. And if you want to get paid well, if you want to stay marketable in this industry, you just know React as a front-end developer. If you don't know React, it's hard to get a front-end position. That's the reality. It's unfortunate, but then people will propose the alternative of bringing like brand new frameworks that are unstable into their code base, especially in the startup world. And a lot of my mindset, it comes from the startup world. I love working for startups. I do. I like the idea of just learning from different departments, but I have an entrepreneurship spirit, and I like building quickly. I do. That is my mindset that as a developer, and I enjoy that a lot. But it doesn't mean I haven't made sacrifices of enjoyment to learn the tools I need to because I was told they were marketable, and they were. I've made those sacrifices and I've accepted them. It doesn't mean that I would necessarily, like, if I created a company, created an app, like I would even, let's say I like created a successful SaaS application, like I still have to account for if I'm ever going to hire engineers, most of them, because every other company requires it, most of them are going to know React very well, and trying to bring someone in that is going to be working on like a completely different front-end framework. Like there are a lot of people that might not even consider applying for my company, like a lot of good software engineers where they feel like they're going to get caught into like spending 6 months, 1 year, 2 years investing in this, like just learning this new framework that's not going to be marketable to other companies. And so companies continue just using React over and over and over and over, not necessarily because it's the best framework, the right tool for the job, but because they know they can bring software engineers in that probably know React because every other company expects it. And then those software engineers can trust that their deepening of that React knowledge is going to spread to other companies. And if you try to introduce different frameworks, you're going to have good software engineers that are going to make a consideration like, 2 years down the road, I'm going to get really rusty with this framework. I'm not going to be as marketable, and they might not even apply for your company. So I feel like the front end world, we're just trapped in React. I like React. I don't hate React, but I don't love React. Well, now I have to learn JSX, Redux, React Router, and a bunch of other React ecosystem nonsense just to build a simple web app. Don't even get me started on how many new frameworks pop up every year. It's like the framework of the month club out there. That is true. Hot new framework drops and every YouTube or Twitter influencer is buzzing about it. Stay the fuck off Twitter. Stay the fuck off Twitter with this shit. Stop it. I'm telling you, stop buying courses from influencers telling you that this new framework is going to make you more marketable and you should buy my course. Stop that bullshit. Holy shit. That used to piss me off on Twitter. I swear, if you looked at my old Twitter account, you will see me getting triggered by larger influencers that are selling courses for these niche frameworks that are brand new. They pop up, and then I just read the comments of the tweet. It's just like, oh yeah, this is going to make us more marketable. This is what's going to stand us out. Everyone should buy us. It's like, holy shit. Twitter is such garbage for actually teaching developers what they need to learn. It's just, I don't know. I am one to say, like, if I ever get large or anything like that, please, like, go bounce to another smaller influencer, because I feel like there's this pool. Like if you're gonna do this full time, you're gonna create videos full time, you're gonna create courses full time. I feel like there's always this like nagging thing in the back of your head, like people are going to buy courses for new technologies. There's a huge misconception in the tech industry that you need to keep up with all this new information, all these new frameworks, all these new libraries, or you're going to fall behind, and that's not true. We're actually in a state, especially at the entry level, where there are a lot of programmers that really have shitty fundamentals. They have really bad fundamentals. They lack it, and that's why they're not getting hired. But man, it's just like you grow as an influencer. It's just like a formula you have to follow. You grow as an influencer, you create courses. I'm creating a course, by the way. I'm not even joking about that. You create courses and then you try to impress people by creating courses about like new technologies, and you know people are going to buy it and scoop it up and you're going to make a bunch of money. Like, I used to get triggered on Twitter all the time with this. Vue gets hot for a minute. Yep. Yep. Everyone was supposed to learn Vue. Then React takes over again. Svelte comes out of nowhere, promising to fix everything. Yep. Yep. Next month is Solid.js or Astro or Remix or whatever new shiny toy comes up. What the hell happened to just picking a tool and sticking with it? Now it's like if you're not rewriting your app in the latest hotness every 6 months, you're screwed. This is just like, this is the problem with this. So many people believe this. So many people believe this, and it just gets reinforced because then more people learn it. A lot of people have this like, I always forget this term, but not wasted time and money on something. They subconsciously push other people to do the same thing when they really have no idea what other people should be doing, when, you know, they're struggling to even solidify their path. But I think when a lot of people get sold on something, they kind of start nudging other people that way, especially if you made a big investment on that thing. And that big investment could just be time, learning that new thing. And I'm only talking about the front end part. I can't keep up with this crap anymore. Well, here's the thing. I was never a professional back-end engineer. There are probably professional back-end engineers that can have a better take, but I feel like the front end is just, it's insane. Sunk cost fallacy sounds correct. But I feel like the front end, the thing is, it pays well. JavaScript positions with front end can pay very well. It's very easy to bump over 100K as a front end engineer, within a couple years. Or like, and I'm just talking about Chicago, but other places you're gonna get paid more, like New York City and any big city in California, you're gonna get paid pretty high. But it pays well. But this bullshit that he's really picking on, it's really, the problem is the front end. Back end, so a lot of hiring managers, if you talk to them, at least the ones I've talked to, they realize there's way more arguments on the front end of what should be done, what conventions should be adopted, what libraries should be pulled in. And there's more arguments on the front end, where I've heard on the back end, not as many. I feel like the back end is in a little bit more of a stable place. You get these obscure pushes for random languages because, older developers just absolutely love it. And that they're not marketable whatsoever, but you get like some influencers that are a bit older that have been programming for a long time, that they'll kind of like push a different language, but within that language, the ecosystem itself is pretty stable. The conventions are more agreed upon on the back end. Front end is just fucked. Everyone and their mother has an opinion about how the front end should be organized and what should be brought into it. I feel like front end is just it pays well. I just don't know if it's worth it. It's really messy. The front end is really messy. But yeah, if you're looking for a little bit more stability and conventions and what you need to learn, you don't want to like have to keep up with every brand new thing all the time. I feel like backend's going to provide a little bit more stability and calm for you. Maybe I'm wrong. Feel free to correct me with that, any professional backend developers, but that's just a feel I got. Ain't nobody got time to rewrite everything in Nuxt or Svelte kit because it's the cool kit of this month. And let's not talk about the TypeScript versus JavaScript debate. It's enough people already on both camps. Oh, TypeScript is better because it has types and my editor helps me correct errors. Oh, you don't need TypeScript. Just put JSDoc on your project and you won't need to do type gymnastics. Does anyone else feel this way? I feel like when I see arguments over TypeScript versus JavaScript, it literally pushes me more towards not adopting TypeScript. I feel like, I I don't know. It's just programming in general. I think people have too strong of opinions in the programming world. I feel like, and I've been in conversations before professionally where we spent way too much time arguing over stuff like this. And not even stuff like this, just even like, should we, if we're going to build a new CSS grid, should we, like, we've had like an entire meeting around using min width versus max width and leaning on one or the other. And I feel like that's just a waste of time, especially in the startup world. Shit just needs to get built. There's just something about these conversations that I feel like they always just lead into, like, they're just petty arguments at some point, and people just they hold on too strongly to their conventions. I don't know. I don't get into these kind of conversations. They don't interest me. Maybe they interest you. Just build something. Look, if I want a static type language, I'd use a real language like Python or PHP. Ouch. Okay. So we got a little bashing of JavaScript. So you're going to see this on Twitter. I'm usually a big proponent for, like, not language bashing. I think every language has their pros and cons. And I think just the people bashing languages on Twitter and stuff like this, it just teaches new developers to do the same thing. And that's not the mindset those new developers should be developing, right? I think they should really be developing more of a mindset of, like, this is good for this use case, this is good for this use case, and this is bad for this use case, and this framework makes sense of the way that we want to scale this app, right? Like, I think there should be more of those conversations, which is why I think, like, Twitter is just a garbage platform that you get advice like this. That's half of me. And then the other half of me looks at this and him bashing JavaScript and says use a real language like PHP. And I kind of just die inside. And then I kind of understand why people bash languages. So we're just going to move on. Instead of some pseudo statically typed BS that it's supposed to work both on the back end and the front end. I hope that the day when JavaScript implements those features as default in the language will come soon and we can get rid of this useless TypeScript versus JavaScript debate. So I'm a big fan of the push for introducing types into... All right, sounds good, Miles. I'm a big fan... Maybe some sarcasm with the PHP. Yeah, but he included Python. I feel like Python has a fairly good reputation. So why would he include Python? I don't know if it was sarcasm. Maybe. Maybe it was. I don't know. But anyways, I'm a big fan of pushing for types in JavaScript. Like, just get rid of types. I'm tired of shit compile. I get the frustration with 50,000 compilers. Like, stop. I'm tired of having so many compilers. I just am. And then we need, like, a brand new framework and ecosystem that uses an engine that's so much faster to be able to compile it and save people so many seconds. I don't want to have to learn a new framework that uses that just to be able to improve my compile times. I feel like we're eventually just forced into new libraries and frameworks, and just because, like, it just gets so bloated. Okay. This article's correct. Here's an idea. How about we just freeze JavaScript for a while? No new frameworks, no new syntax. Just stick with what works for a year. No, that is not going to happen anytime soon. I would love $1 million as well. Honestly, I'd love $1 million. So we'll just continue wishing for stuff. But no, the JavaScript hype train keeps on chugging. Bloated as ever. Everyone wants to be the next rock star with their own popular framework and 100k GitHub stars. Why the fuck do people care about this? I never understood this. People like building frameworks and libraries, and they're glued. It's kind of like a YouTuber glued to the number of views each video gets or the number of subscribers that you get for your channel as a whole. That's how library creators treat GitHub stars. Why? I never understood it. Is there like this whole ecosystem of developers, like this whole social network on GitHub that I just don't understand? Like, this is why I don't even link my GitHub. I don't care. My GitHub is like, I use GitHub for a remote source control. That's it. I don't understand like people trying to bling out their profile. I never got it. I never picked up that habit. I don't. Does it bring conversions? Does it bring an audience? Like, are people that star your repositories and follow you on GitHub, do they convert to customers or anything like that? Like, I don't care how many subscribers I do. I just create content, and I hope the videos do well, but I can understand if you're trying to like create a business as a content creator and this converts. Like, there's a huge conversion rate on the number of people that follow you on GitHub. I just never got or understood pushing GitHub as like this big social network that you need to give a shit about. GitHub sponsors. Are there a lot of GitHub sponsors? Meanwhile, I'm just trying to make a website layout without needing a CS degree and 200 dependencies. Look, I get why it is this way. Moving fast and breaking things is a lot of Silicon Valley, right? I think it's more. So we're talking about like bringing a bunch of dependencies in. I think it's more than just trying. I think that's actually a big part of it, trying to move fast and build features quickly. I do. But I also think more CTOs need to put their foot down, and they see a lot of the developers on their team that have shiny toy syndrome, and I think more CTOs need to put their foot down and truly think about like how maintainable this is long term. But, you know, like I've had CTOs that like really cared about the product and were planning to be there for a long time, and I've had CTOs that really just want to build up a career and then they were going to move on, or they kind of had an in. What's up, DF? They had an in with business and the company was going to go under, and so they didn't really care about like bad habits being introduced into the tech team necessarily, like a ton of bloat and potential technical debt down the road because they knew the company was going to be sold. I guess it depends on the company, but there are like a lot of startups do, like they just want to push shit out fast. But like, man, people don't have attention spans anymore. It's hard to keep people's attention. You're constantly having to push out new features or revamp your current features, and that takes a lot of tech work. I think it's also just because of the expectations, especially of a new company, where the reputation and trust hasn't quite been built up. Like, it's kind of needed, but like then we can get into the startup culture around, like I'm thinking of like startups where someone like really had an idea they believe in and they want to create a company for the next 20 years. Those are the startups, at least, no. Those are the startups I like working at, where the CEO is in love with the product. I like that. I like the team. I like the culture around that. But there are a lot of people just trying to make a large amount of money and, you know, push tech out very quickly. And they basically made a bunch of promises to investors, and, you know, scalability and like long-term maintainability isn't really a goal. And I would argue like larger companies you're going to have less of this, obviously, but it also gets you to think about like, what kind of company do I want to work at? Usually you're going to get a little bit more stability in larger companies, and especially companies that have been around a while. But web devs have gone from adopting new tech to just recklessly grabbing every new shiny object like hungry seagulls. Just because you can build a new framework doesn't mean you should. We have enough choices already. How about improving the tools we already have instead of starting from scratch every year? And I know that every new framework that has come up to this point has done so with the intention of improving the web dev space, but you know what they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We not only have an overabundance of web frameworks, libraries, but also of web dev tooling. I think we have an overabundance and a weird convention for how we rate testing in an app, for how we measure success in creating a test suite for our app. I think there's an overabundance of a lot of things, a lot of different libraries in a lot of different areas, but I have been at a company that I felt like they completely overdid it. I feel like you just get a CTO, you just get a senior software engineer that has very strong convictions, and they force their conventions into solving a problem where their conventions don't quite make sense. They overload it with tests. They're testing the wrong components. They are using they bring in Angular for something that doesn't require a little bit more of an in-depth framework, right? I feel like a lot of the conventions, a lot that gets adopted is just like developers and programmers that take too hard of stances on their conventions, and they're not open-minded enough to just use what the problem requires you to use to be able to solve that problem. But also, that's where I think your strength and your marketability as you become more of a senior engineer is more exposure to different languages, to different frameworks. I think that's really healthy. I think you got to be careful about the amount of time you spend doing that as an entry-level developer trying to get your first job. But once you get into the industry, I think it's very healthy to explore different conventions, different frameworks, different ways of doing things. Because I think when you have more exposure like that and you try to solve more problems with different things that you've been exposed to, you get more comfortable with being able to identify exactly what you need and building a team, building buy-in for what you're trying to create and solidify in your team in terms of the conventions that your team should follow and what you guys should use. But I feel like, man, I just feel like some senior developers are way too stuck in their ways, and they just try to fix everything with a hammer. It's always just a hammer. They have their conventions and they stick to it. I think part of the problem is senior developers need to be a little bit more open-minded and get more exposure so they're more comfortable they have a variety of tools to be able to build whatever they need to build. And most of them are doing a very similar thing, just in a different way because of innovation. Why don't we stop acting like petty little kids and instead collaborate to make web development the simple and enjoyable space it once was? Wait, what? Where did this come from? I can understand the shiny toy syndrome, but what makes people petty by wanting to bring in something new? I feel like this author has some trauma in the tech industry that they didn't open up on with this article. I don't know. This author kind of seems really irritated at this. But where did this come from? But who am I kidding? Really? This industry will keep attracting new developers trying to make a name for themselves while churning out another amount. New frameworks and tools aren't going away anytime soon, and websites will keep getting big, bloated with all fancy things like WebGL, 3D animations, whatever else. I think that's not a bad thing. I love the idea of bringing gamified experiences to the web. I like the idea, 3JS is a really cool library. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you could build with it. And being able to use JavaScript to build games on the web, you couldn't do that at nearly as well, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And I think taking advantage of Chrome really hooking into the graphics, or whatever your browser, really hooking into graphics to be able to build full-fledged games and just gamified experiences. I think that's really cool. I think animations can work. I think sometimes people overdo it, and we've gone over that in our portfolio reviews, but I feel like this author makes a really good point with the state of JavaScript, and I'm glad, for the most part, I agree, and I'm glad he's pushing back on... He's really pushing back on things that just continue to change and change and change, and they don't necessarily need to change. But I feel like this author has, nostalgia of what it used to be like, And I feel like they're really set in their ways like 20 years ago, and they hate what web development has become. Like, I feel like there's a middle ground between the frustration of this author and, you know, people that do have shiny toy syndrome and try to push the new framework and trying to sell a course with the new framework. It's just like there's a middle ground. So I feel like this author's bitter at something. I'm just curious, like, what his experience was to make him this bitter. I'll better order another tequila shot because this crowded frat party ain't slowing down anytime soon. Okay, either way, this ending, I don't know, it just seemed a bit like petty, I guess. But I think there's a lot of like really good advice and a really good mindset to take away from this. And I think developers, especially front-end developers, should be willing to push back when tons of other developers are really pushing for the newest framework, the newest library, because it's gotten extremely ridiculous and people just can't keep up with it. There's too much new shit, and I think it's going to exponentially increase, and front end is going to be incredibly hard to keep up with, to the point where like you need AI to be able to keep up with all of this. So anyways, overall I like this article. I do. What do you guys think of it? All right, let me catch up a little bit. Been at a few companies whose entire goal was to get acquired. Yep, that is a big one. I feel it is not a tool issue, rather how the industry forming the developers. Well, I mean, yeah, you're getting into more the root of the problem. But it is a tool issue. There's still an issue with the availability of all of these tools. Because I think it's overwhelming and very confusing for a lot of developers. So I still think that's an issue. But it is the mindset of like what this industry is pushing for too. It's like a lot of new developers aren't really getting a solid foundation, and they're rushing through it. And those developers that are just trying to rush through anything will probably contribute to this problem at some point. What's up, Jessa? How you doing? All right, let me catch up. Okay. I think the whole ping pong tables, beer taps, and free lunches feels so far removed from what employees actually want in a job. Where's the mentorship, skill development, and career advancement? Yeah. And I think as you get older, that stuff is less appealing. And I think a lot of older people, like, they have families and, you know, they have bills and responsibilities, and they just want money. They want more money, and they want to be able to spend it how they choose to. And I think it does cater to a younger audience for sure in the tech industry. It makes some good points, but half the fun of web dev is how eclectic, unopinionated, and fast-moving it is. But it's very opinionated, though. I wouldn't say it's unopinionated. I think how opinionated it is and how opinionated developers are is a problem. And it can be fun. It can be interesting. But, like, what good points do you think he makes, though, Matt? Because I feel like maybe you are someone that, like, really enjoys diving into brand new technologies often. I agree with what you said. The article seems to have been written with someone with years in the industry. That is true. Yeah, this person's probably been around for a while. I don't know. I didn't look into him. You can. The link is in the description, so if you want to check out the article, like, feel free and show the author some love. Seriously. Because it's content for me. No, but, like, anyone that's willing to share their opinions online and, like, spend time with a blog post and really take time out to make a point, that's great. Because I'm tired of, like, these quick dunks and just bad takes on Twitter that are just like developers shitting on each other all the time. So at least with a blog post, a little bit more effort is put into elaborating on the idea and why they think the way they think. Not a fan of the writing style, but the subject is interesting. I think it goes back to what you always say about look up the market you are trying to get hired in and learn those languages, frameworks. Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Rushing development skills can be dangerous especially if you're in it for the wrong reasons. Eventually, you'll hit that wall where only those that actually like developing push through. Yep, exactly. That's way too many developers are trying to dive in too quickly, and it's a good practice to build several websites without React. It's a good, like if you're diving at a front end, the number of people that need to pick up a CSS library right away because they were told they should, the number of people that dive into React quickly without like really understanding JavaScript or understanding JavaScript fundamentals or programming fundamentals overall, like it just keeps increasing. There are so many brand new developers that just have a really shitty foundation. And it's like, it's got me to think, man, like, I think companies are just losing trust for alternative education because of it. And they're starting to put their trust back in CS degrees. And the less we push against all of these mechanisms, rushing people through and trying to rush them through, we're basically going to scare companies from ever considering people that come from alternative education. I think it's awesome. People that come from alternative education and have that ability to like, or that time investment to be able to like push through that because they don't have the money to spend on a CS degree. Like I like that accessibility into the industry. That's a really cool part of becoming a software engineer. But we're just creating more and more resistance. We're creating less and less trust with employers based on the amount of people we're just pushing through that just have no fucking idea what they're doing. It's just hurting the industry. And I think like you got to be careful. So like really if you're becoming a front-end developer, get really good with vanilla CSS. Don't just lean on Flexbox to be able to structure it. Don't lean on CSS Grid to be able to structure it. Go back to some old methods. Figure out some of the janky ways you've had to do things with CSS. They'll most likely pop up in some code base you're going to be working with. And they'll truly help you understand CSS. And same with JavaScript, just leaning on so many people dive into React that don't understand JavaScript. They don't even understand what React is. They don't really understand how it works. They don't understand what it means when people say like React is just a view. Well, what does that mean? Well, you should know what that means because you should know what's React is solving. You should know what's happening under the hood. And so many people aren't willing to invest the time into it because they've been sold this false dream that they could just streamline becoming a developer. That's a huge problem. And so they're more open to picking up libraries and just pulling in dependencies rather than building out their own methods, building out their own libraries. It's a problem. It's a big problem. Let's go back to floats. I love it. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. I just want to hop on, go over this topic. Hope you enjoyed it. I will keep it public. You can check it out later. But yeah, I will have a Q&A session this Thursday. And it'll be at 5 p.m. Central Time. So if you do have questions, I appreciate most of you holding off until then. And if you have questions about becoming a web developer, that is the time to ask. All right, guys, thanks so much. Hope you have a good rest of your night. Good luck in all of your projects and happy coding. Oh, before I forget, everyone that does support me on Patreon, thank you. I got to update this list for this week. But everyone that does support me on Patreon, $5 a month, it goes directly towards my bills, and I do appreciate it. Thank you. All right, guys, have a good night. See you later.